From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Welcome back from vacation.
Thank you very much. It was a great 2 weeks off.
Also joining us in studio is Charles Allen. He is a member of the D.C. Council. He's a Democrat representing Ward 6. Councilmember Allen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Tom does look well rested.
If you have comments or questions for Charles Allen, you can start calling now, 800-433-8850. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream there, and join the conversation, or send us email to kojo@wamu.org. You should know that from time to time, Tom takes staycations, and people often wonder why he chooses to stay home. I know why. He doesn't like the irritating questions he gets when he takes a real vacation, where people say, "Where are you from?"
You read my column this
And
week.
when he says, "I am from Washington," they say, "In the city? Right. You live in the city?" Right. What's up with that?
Well, it's the hangover from the city as a crime, murder capital of the world, with nothing but poverty and disgraceful politicians, the whole scene that from the 80s and then to the 90s that led to the control board. And people are just not aware of the dramatic turnaround of the city in terms of growth of population. The council member can speak to it better than me about all the changes. And people just are stunned when you tell them you actually live in the city. And then when I tell them I just live less than a mile from the Air and Space Museum, they think that's pretty cool. But they wonder if I'm risking my life going there.
It's absolutely amazing that after all of this time, people still think of the city in terms of the 1980s and 1990s in Washington, D.C.
Tom is rapidly changing.
Tom is also irritated by people from suburban jurisdictions who apparently, when they are traveling and asked where they live, say,
Washington, and when they're not, look at the Attorney General just this week. Just yesterday, has filed suit against these two police officers who've lived in the suburbs, Maryland and Virginia, I think, and sent their 3 children to D.C. schools where they got, daycare and all kind of and lunch programs. It's like $200,000 worth of education. A lot of people want to claim the city, but I would like for those who are able to pay the taxes in the city. And
it's got to be difficult if you're on the other coast to explain to someone the relationship between Logan County and the District of Columbia. It's much easier to say you're from Washington. Do you mind that, Charles Allen?
If more and more people want to claim DC as their home, not as their residence for DCPS, I'm all for it, because this is a great city.
Public school system.
Exactly, which is what the 2 officers who are being sued right now.
We can.
But no, this is a fantastic city. It is. It's growing dramatically, quickly, and it's a great time to be in DC. I think that reputation certainly is changing very fast as well. But the fantastic time to be in Columbia.
Tom, you may or may not be happy to know that Montgomery County seems to be preparing to hire a law firm that worked on Boston's Big Dig and other troubled public works projects, according to the Washington Post, to act as its special counsel for lawsuits expected to arise from the design and construction of, guess what?
There's the transit center.
The Silver Spring Transit Center, one of your favorite targets.
So we could just tear it down and start over. It'd be cheaper.
Yeah, because it looks as if, because there are still flaws that were found, or I should say alleged flaws before I get sued, alleged flaws in the transit center, that they apparently expect to be sued.
Well, there's going to be legal battles over who's responsible, with the Metro. First of all, Metro has to decide whether it will take possession of this horrible thing. And it may not for some time, because it wants to be absolutely clear that the place is safe and that people will, in fact, ride these big lumbering buses into it, and that people, in fact, will come in there, and that the Metro will be able to use it. Then there's the fight over why it's $50 million at minimum over budget. Who's responsible? Who's going to pay? So the county is right to have the best lawyers it can hire, because I'm sure the other litigants will have their lawyers.
Speaking of Metro and lawyers, Metro apparently gave a contract to its general counsel on the very same day that aforesaid general counsel resigned from Metro, rehired the same day as a consultant to the board. But when questions start being raised about that, especially by Maryland Transportation Secretary Pete Ron, the chairman of Metro's board, Mortimer L. Downey, apparently decided, I don't need this aggravation. And while they refused, Metro did, to release a copy of the general counsel's contract payment or payment terms or a description of the work she was paid for, he said, that's it. She's out of here. But
well, it's not
the
that
transparency
uncommon.
that
It is not
have to
that
record.
uncommon in government circles, particularly, or federal government circles, for people to be in positions of authority, and for example, the military. You're in the military. You're in charge of a particular program. You retire from the military, and then you get hired by the companies with whom you did business. That happens throughout government. I don't know how much it happens in private
Yeah, but
sector.
this was the same company.
But the issue here for me, though, is not because if the person's qualified and you can make a case for the person to be hired, that's one thing. If it's a sweetheart deal and all those things. But, this just points up again to me why Metro and council members should weigh in. The city representatives on Metro, Mayor Bowser and Jack Evans, among others, have said Metro needs to be managed. And it has huge problems, big debts, and it needs a manager. It doesn't need some transit expert who can tell you not to go 100 miles an hour around a curve. But it needs somebody who can manage this multi-billion-dollar operation. Council member?
Without question, you've got to have strong management. I do think we can probably walk and chew gum at the same time and be focused on both transit needs and strong management. But without question, the management seems to have not been there, and we're seeing huge financial lapses, huge lapses in terms of the prioritization around some of the safety issues. I'm somebody who rides Metro pretty much every day. I take the bus, I ride Metro Rail. It's an important part of how I get around my city, how I get back and forth to work. I feel safe riding Metro, but I'm also concerned about the future of the Metro system and where it will be able to strengthen, where we are really seeing some pretty significant deficiencies.
Should we have a regional authority that is more streamlined? You go to a Metro board meeting, it's like going to Metro Center on the platform waiting for one of the trains that's not working. There's so many people on the board. There's so many staffers. I don't know how anyone gets anything done. It just seems like a bureaucratic mess.
Well, I'm not sure either. I'm not on the board, but I know that it is something that I hear from board members themselves, frustrated with the pace, frustrated with the answers that they get. I think that certainly the council's representative, Jack Evans, when he got on, he immediately came back to the council and said, hey, guys, I think we're in trouble. And we have had several conversations and meetings amongst just the council members to understand exactly where we are and to understand what financial pitfalls are possibly coming down the road.
Our guest is Charles Allen. He's a member of the D.C. Council. He's a Democrat representing Ward 6. If you've got questions or comments for him, give us a call, 800-433-8850. Send email to kojo@wamu.org or shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show.
We should say Ward 6 is in an obscure part of the city known as Capitol Hill and near Southwest, where there's billions of dollars of development.
Tom, Ward 6 is the biggest ward in the entire city. It's the only one that touches all four quadrants. It's Shaw, it's Noma, it's 8th Street, it's Hill East, it's Capitol Hill, it's Southwest, it's Navy Yard. Absolutely.
Well, I live in this ward, so I have to disclose that,
Well, what's also in the ward is it looks like a new soccer stadium. It looks like DC and DC United's owners have reached a deal to keep the team in DC. It came together quickly. That's after it became public that the team was in talks for a possible move to Loudoun County with Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. How could you fall for an old trick like that? Come on.
I don't know if everybody would agree with you. It came together quickly. They've been at this for quite some time. I'm not sure.
But
DC
once you heard that they were meeting with McAuliffe, it was like, okay, we got to get this done right now, which is exactly what the team probably wanted.
You know what? I interpreted it a different way. I think
know.
Sometimes at the 11th hour of deals, you start to see some kooky things happen, and that's exactly what I think happened. I'm very glad that we've got the deal done, and I think that it provides some greater assurances, some greater certainties for the district, and I think it also provides certainty for DC United and for the team. And for Buzzard Point, where it's going to be located, it really does have the potential to be transformative for that portion of Southwest and for that portion of the city in terms of creating brand new jobs, new housing, new amenities, new businesses. I think that it really, if done right, and that's where I'm going to put my energy.
Well, the sticking point has been the land swap that has to take place. This week's deal would require that the district secure the land for the new stadium. Is there still the potential for this to hit another snag?
Well, No, I don't think so. I think that they're going to continue negotiating around the land. We've got a very clear deadline as to when that'll take place, September 30th.
Right?
Exactly. And one of the things that was a part of this final deal, previously DC United had terms that they had to basically do their evaluation. They still had a go or no-go decision as late as November and December of this year, after the district had already purchased and assembled the land. And the district wanted to limit that risk and liability. And so we were able to move that up. And now DC United has to make a final go or no-go decision by mid-September. I feel very confident it's going to be a full go. But that's the type of negotiation in the final deal that also added in those extra protections for district residents.
Soccer's a big deal. I was in Orlando part of my vacation, and while I was there, the soccer team there was going to get like $32 million either from Orange County or the city. I can't remember which. And they're doing so well with the people who want soccer tickets that they told the city it did not have to pay the $32 million. I thought that was kind of nice. But the big issue here is there's one major piece of land left. Chip Ackridge is the developer who is the representative of his own interest, and then some pension funds investors he has there. And he wants more money per square foot than the city at this point is willing to do. So I asked the mayor at the press conference, are you going to go and just take it by eminent domain and then fight out in courts over what you're really going to do? She wouldn't say yes or no, but I keep hearing that if the Ackridge Group doesn't settle soon, we could have eminent domain proceedings as early as next week.
Well, let the record show that DC United is my favorite soccer team. But if this goes ahead, what's going to be the cost to DC taxpayers?
Well, on Tom's point around eminent domain, it could happen. You're right. It could happen tomorrow, but it has up until September 30th. And I certainly hope we don't have to use that. I think that the parties are all still negotiating, and I hope that they get to a deal that avoids that. But it is still on the table. They have full authority to do it. And that's why I think they will exercise the authority we have to get a deal done
one way or the other.
September.
So what's the city in for, as Kojo just asked?
Well, the district has the responsibility within the deal to assemble the land and do what we call the horizontal preparation, so getting the land ready. And so we have the significant amount of money that's going into that project. Then we have DC United who will actually build the stadium. And then we have the cap on any cost overruns. And again, this is part of what the final deal had, splits that so that up to $20 million over, the district is on the hook for 10, but DC United is now on the hook for 10 as well. Previously, that had been all in the district. So again,
and we would pay $150 million to acquire and prepare the land at Buzzard Park. Okay,
right. It's all industrial land, so it needs to be cleaned up from pollutants, all that type of. But now the city has passed the budget. The city. I talked to the chief financial officer this week, and the city is doing remarkably well. You were elected in part to be, protect the neighborhood, the growth in the neighborhood, and all that. You represent the area that has the RFK Stadium, which will be sitting empty once the soccer team leaves. The DC events DC people are looking at how to use it. One of the things is to allow the Skins to come back to town and build a new stadium there at their expense, but just similar to the soccer deal. But they would build a team. But you're opposed to that. Why?
Well, I think if you look at that site right along the Anacostia River, right on the edge of huge neighborhoods, both from Ward 6 and Ward 7. I think that we could just be doing so much more with that site. It is an ocean of asphalt that surrounds a stadium that would end up being used 8 days out of the year. And I think that is not.
What if you took out a lot of the parking and made an extra metro stop there right in the stadium like there is at Verizon Center?
Well, there already is a metro station. I mean, you've already got Stadium Armory right there.
That's too far. For us old people, that's way up the street.
You can 100 yards away.
But you could eliminate all that parking by putting the metro stop in the new stadium, because the stadium, the line runs right by it, and then that way you.
When I hear a lot of people argue for the Washington football team, they talk about the
name of the team.
I don't.
What do you think about the mayor agreeing to use the name sporadically? She calls it offensive, but in order to talk to the Skins, she agreed to use the name a couple of times just to show that she wouldn't ban the name.
I think the name's offensive. I think she has said it is. I haven't talked to her specifically about her use of the football team's name.
She consciously did it so she couldn't talk to the team. The team would set it as a standard.
I haven't had a single conversation with her about that.
You and fellow council members voted Wednesday to appropriate more than $7 billion in local tax money without waiting for Congress to approve the spending. What does that mean in practical terms, if anything?
Well, it was probably the quietest historic vote that the council's ever taken. It was something that we've never cast this second vote For folks who followed on the inside, it's a very big deal for us to take that second vote on what we call the Budget Request Act. But essentially, from a practical standpoint, what it will help do as we continue through the legal process is make sure that the district has more control over spending our own tax dollars, avoid the situation when we have a handful of Tea Party Republicans that decide they want to shut down the government from time to time. Helps make sure that that's not going to happen, and make sure that our city can continue working. It's a move towards full autonomy for the district, and it's a technical move, but it's an important one.
But the CFO at this point does not believe he has the authority to. This is a very complicated subject. I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. What's happened is the council passed this budget based on the new standard that the local money, $7 billion, will not have to go through review by Congress, although House has said that that's illegal. So what the city is going to do is going to submit two budgets, one under the way the council wants it to be submitted, and another under the way it has to be submitted under the current law, so that way the CFO can continue to write checks after October 1st.
That's
and
right.
then we'll fight into the courts
Yep.
about whether or not the city has authority to overrule
Yes,
Congress.
We'll fight it out in D.C. Superior Court
Well,
rather
I
than
bet
federal
you
court,
don't.
and that's where we want it.
That's what Richard in Arlington, Virginia would like to ask you about, Councilmember Allen. Richard, you are on the air. Go ahead, please. Hi, Richard. Are you there? Richard wants to know. Richard, you're shuffling papers in the background. You're not listening, but I'm going to interpret. You want to know why challenging the budget authority of Congress is going to succeed in court. Or you think it's going to succeed in court?
Well, I certainly can't predict it, but I believe that it will. And I think that we've got very sound legal arguments, very sound legal reasoning. And that's what I expect that will happen, is that we're going to find that the voters initiative, which 80% or more of our voters said that we want full budget autonomy, that's the law of the land. And that's what we're going to find out through the courts.
How could the Superior Court, which is a local court, tell the Congress to leave the city alone? Now, that's a federal issue. Judge Sullivan, who did the road on this, says this is a federal issue. He disagrees with the appeals court that this is a federal issue, not a Superior Court issue.
Well,
I don't know how you get into Superior Court on an issue of whether or not you're following the laws of Congress.
Well, we could spend an entire show talking just the legal strategy of how this goes about. But that is a part of what the legal strategy has been, is to put this and place this within the Superior Court and to make sure that we have more local control over that decision.
As a citizen of the city, I support what you do, which is have us control our money. But as a reporter, I just see this as one more legal possible dead end.
Well,
We'll see.
it may be. We've had certainly a large number of legal dead ends before, but I don't believe that that's the way this is going to end up.
In the meantime, conservative Republicans are working on their own budget in which they're defunding district laws, including gun control and legal marijuana. Yesterday, House Republicans moved a plan forward that would prevent legal sale of marijuana in the district until 2017. On the one hand, some people would say that's bad news. On the other hand, advocates of legal marijuana think there's some good news in there because it doesn't roll back Initiative 71, which allows the use of marijuana in the district.
Well, right. We've certainly seen some of the obnoxious rioters that have continued. Everything from needle exchange to using our own funds to help provide abortions, and the marijuana law that they're putting in there. I think the fact that you've got Andy Harris from Maryland who's saying, I don't need to go any further. I can see how some people will see that as a win, but it's not a win until we get full legislative autonomy. Congress is going to continue to be able to put on riders, and as you saw with Marco Rubio putting in, trying to strip away every ounce of our gun laws, it has a whole lot more to do for these guys about how they send out a fundraising email or how they position themselves with the NRA than it does about actually having anything to do with the district residents.
And if the Congress leaves in place the fact that marijuana is legal in the city, but says the city can take no action in order to enforce it or to regulate it or sell it and collect taxes from it, it seems like it's a Wild West for marijuana in the city, and the city gets zero benefit from it. That's a terrible position to be in.
Ideally, what we are going to move towards is being able to have the legal authority to set up our own system of where we're able to tax and regulate and create all those different pieces that we feel need to go into that. Until then, though, this is the law of the land. And I don't know if I'd call it the Wild West, because I think that, when this took effect, the sky didn't fall. Things seem to have worked. Our MPD was ready. We've had by and
The
large,
only
a
way
pretty
to get
smooth rollout.
marijuana in town, if you don't grow it, and there's no way, is to buy it illegally. And so we've
As that was the case before the
right.
initiative
I know,
71
but
took
I'm
effect.
saying that I'm saying that Congress has perpetuated an illegal system by its
At
interference
least
with
until
city law.
2017.
Actually,
Here
agreeing
is-
with the council member on something.
I appreciate
Here
it.
is Byron in Washington, D.C. Byron, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a comment about the sports teams that keep getting stadiums built in the District of Columbia. Basically, as a citizen, I feel like we're being held hostage. Every time a sports team wants a stadium, they're like, oh, well, if you all are going to give us a stadium, we're going to go someplace else. With DC United, they had RFK Stadium to use, along with the baseball team had RFK Stadium to use, and they want to build another stadium. The citizens don't get anything when we get a stadium. The stadium's only used when they're ball games for that sport, and the rest of the time that land sits there and we're maintaining it and everything, and the district isn't getting anything for it. There are always these areas where, other people are getting all the benefits and the district's stuck with the maintenance of it or taking up space and
Well,
and we're doing nothing.
you make a valid point, except what assures you that the citizens don't want a stadium?
How many citizens make money off these stadiums?
Well, a lot of them
When the
show up.
stadium is-
A lot of them show up in these stadiums,
Well,
whether they make money off of them or not.
Yeah, the council member can answer it, but we got 60% of the people who go to the Nats games are people from Virginia who are spending money in our city.
Well, we also get one of the things when we build a stadium like this. There's a couple of pieces here. I mean, Byron's point's it's a good question. It's one that has to be answered. But the construction of the stadium, the jobs that come with that, we've entered into agreements. This is part of that whole negotiation around if the city is going to be putting up money and putting the land together, that we're getting the type of jobs that we want, both in the construction as well as what happens after the stadium is built. And we've got multiple years worth of commitments and assurances that are enforceable around the types of jobs that we create. And those are going to be good quality, high paying, living wage jobs for DC residents. The other piece is you look at the area where the stadium is going to be going. Buzzard Point, besides the fact that it's not a very attractive name, is really nothing more than a scrapyard and a concrete factory right now. What we're going to be able to do with this is create something where that land and that area does not help serve DC residents and our neighborhoods very well right now.
What
It's
about
going to be
this?
transformative for that. It'll also reconnect the Anacostia River to Southwest, which is really important, I believe, to the health of our
Byron,
entire
thank
city.
you for your call.
One more sports question. What would you think? Somebody mentioned this to me today. The Verizon Center was opened in 1997, 98 maybe. It's starting to get old. In some years, it's like the third oldest in the NBA. At some point, the team's going to say, well, we need a new center. What would you say to putting a whole sports complex out there where RFK is, where you might have this football team, a coliseum, which would be more used for nights than 8 a year, a big project there, in addition to all the community things you want? Move the Verizon Center to the Anacostia River also and make a real sports center there with year-round activities.
I think you're about to make Jack Evans really unhappy. I think part of why I look at RFK as the site as not an ideal site is the way in which a football stadium is going to be used. When you build out a stadium for 50, 60, 80,000 people, and it's just 8 Sundays out of the year, that's just not a good use of the space. And the amount of parking that goes with an NFL stadium it's what it is today. And it is just an ocean of asphalt out there that doesn't get used, that doesn't serve our city, doesn't serve the residents of the neighborhood. The ideas around things like, we've talked about this before, the Capitol Riverfront Youth Sports Park, which could create soccer fields and green space, space for the flea market that's out there. The ability to create something that would really serve our residents, the young folks in youth leagues, adults in adult leagues, just green space just naturally, as well as the environmental impact would just be really, really transformative if we could come up with a creative idea like that.
We got an email from Andy. Can you give us a real update on the H Street trolley? As a Ward 6 resident and H Street Northeast neighbor, the lack of transparency with this project is incredibly frustrating. What have you done since you've joined the council to get more information out to the public in regards to the finances of this program?
That's a great question, Andy. It's frustrating and it's a little bit mind-boggling. I think that the DDOT director has been very wise to stop making promises about when we will see the streetcar run. I know that I think that it can work, but we obviously have to make sure that it does and that it's smart. The connection just between 3rd Street, basically running up to the top of Hopscotch Bridge and then down to the golf course, That's not a streetcar line. That's going to be more of a novelty ride. So we've got to make the expansion both east and west. And I worked very closely with the mayor, with Chairman Mendelson, with Ms. Che, to make sure that we have the funding in there to do just that, to have the expansion both east and west, to get it up over Hopscotch, continue the line downtown, and also, importantly, continue the line down Benning to the east. So that's how you make that line work, and that's what was included in this budget that we just passed.
Would the line go all the way into town? Would it go all the way to Georgetown, or at this point, or would it stop somewhere in downtown?
I think that the funding
Undecided.
intends it to go all the way to Georgetown. I don't believe there's any final decisions around that. I know that that's part of what I certainly would expect DDOT to do, is to look at the range of options to figure out how in the world would you get it downtown. I think connecting to places like the convention center and some locations downtown make a lot of sense, but I think that's part of what I certainly expect DDOT to do. And I do think the DDOT director is bringing a very clear-eyed, sober approach to how to get this back on track.
We got a tweet from Grady who says, Mr. Allen, we need police to stop illegal fireworks in Lincoln Park on 4th of July. Please help. Safety fire hazard.
I appreciate it. I was just speaking with the ANC commissioner for that neighborhood as well, just last night, actually, over email. And that's for folks that don't know, Lincoln Park is actually a National Park Service park, not a DC park. And I met with the head of National Parks for that area. And obviously the 4th of July, they're a little busy. They all head straight down to the mall. They have a huge national fireworks show.
They have a staff shortage to begin with.
And they do. And I talked to him about Lincoln Park, and I was kind of shocked that the National Park Service director didn't realize that Lincoln Park was being used this way. So I've asked him to help out this year, and not to quash everyone's fun on the 4th of July, but to also make sure, though, that we are not having these fireworks go off late into the wee hours of the morning. Make sure it's being done safely on the early side, but then also bring it to an end so that the neighbors aren't listening to fireworks go off.
Part of the problem, though, is
long.
For the 30, 40 years I've lived in the city, fireworks on the 4th of July, people complain about them, but they happen. People go up to, they're illegal in the city. Anything that goes up higher than 10 feet, I think it's illegal in the
Basically,
city.
if it goes off the ground.
But you can go to Delaware or West Virginia or Pennsylvania, and you can buy rocket ships, all kinds of things. And that seems like that's not going to happen. Someone always gets those fireworks, and they shoot them off. I stand on top of the building where I live, and you can watch them all around the city going off.
I agree. It's part of our history and our culture. This is part of it. Is we have little neighborhood fireworks shows. I think we've got our challenge is to find the balance between making sure they're done safely and also respecting the fact that we've also have people who have small kids or pets or anything, that a massive fireworks show that goes late into the night is highly disruptive and potentially dangerous in some neighborhoods.
Here's Sydney in Washington, D.C. Sydney, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have a question about the DC budget bill, and in particular about a rider that was slipped in sort of under the radar, which protects District of Columbia Public Schools from FOIA, that's Freedom of Information Act, requests for data concerning the teacher evaluation system, which is called IMPACT. This rider, if it's passed on part of the bill, would make it virtually impossible for teachers or for groups of teachers in a class action to obtain through any kind of means information from the District of Columbia about that system. Thank you for listening to the question.
Charles Allen.
Well, thank you, Sydney. I appreciate it. I'd have to go back and look at the specific language on this. And I think when you mean rider, at least when I hear rider, I think Congress, and I think what you're talking about is within the DC budget. But we certainly have to find a balance between protecting people's confidentiality and their privacy with making our data much more open and public. And I think that we have a long way to go when it comes to our school system with Ossie, our state superintendent. I've talked with our superintendent on exactly that. Get more of our data to be open. How do we help people be able to have access to it and then be able to use it and glean ideas around it? So I think that we have a lot of work to do in terms of opening up our data, not just in our schools, but really across our entire city.
Do you think police camera or video ought to be available to Freedom of Information requests when we start using police cameras?
We need to be smart and strategic about it. I think Kenya McDuffie's actually done a good job of leading the council through this. Right now, if you do a FOIA request for body camera images, we already have a whole set of tools around how we manage FOIA. So doing a blanket exemption from FOIA, I don't think is necessarily the right way to go. I think that we have a lot of tools right now that help protect privacy. And I think the chief has a lot of valid points. That's why I really supported the approach that we're taking, which is let's spend the next couple of months really outlining how something like this would work. And I think by October 1st, we're supposed to have our new set of rules and policies in place.
We're almost out of time, but Flag Day is Sunday. For those who don't know, what is Flag Day?
Flag Day is it's a national event. We celebrate here DC Flag Day, and that is this Sunday, June 14th, every year. We've got, according to the Vexillological Institute, we've got the best flag in the country, and I would agree. It's a beautiful symbol, and our flags really are symbols. And so, you can see people, whether they put it on a tattoo, whether it's a business that incorporates the flag into their business logo. It's a symbol, and it also is a symbol of our frustration, our lack of representation, and I think that's why people really feel a sense of pride in it.
Last week, you introduced legislation that would allow residents to request a flag. How would that work?
Yeah, so right now you can get an American flag flown over the Capitol, and one of the things that people do it for honorary purposes, commemorative purposes.
100,000 a year.
Yeah, they have a whole machine where they're putting the flags up, putting the flags down. I had a lot of constituents that started asking me how to get their own DC flag, and I found out we didn't have it here in DC. So the legislation would allow us to have a flag at the building. Could be on top, could be outside. We're still working out details like that. But basically, for just the cost of a flag, you could get your own flag as flown at your state capitol, the Wilson Building.
Charles Allen is a member of the DC Council. He's a Democrat representing Ward 6. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you both very much. Enjoyed it.
Joining us very shortly will be Allison Silverberg. She is the Vice Mayor of Alexandria who won this week's primary election for mayor. If you have questions or comments for her, you can start calling now, 800-433-8850. Or you can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream and ask a question or comment there. Tom, Maryland Transportation Secretary Pete Ron has apparently recommended to Governor Larry Hogan that he approve building the Purple Line once changes are made to reduce its cost to the state. It's not clear whether the governor will agree. He has indicated that he's not looking at this very favorably in the past, but on a recent trip to Asia, he was really impressed with some of the high-speed trains he saw there. This recommendation was apparently made last month. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, the Transportation Secretary Ron suggested that this $2.5 billion project maybe be cut by $300 million. Now, in every world except government, $300 million is a lot of money. But in the government, it's really not. So the decision about building the Purple Line should be based on what we'll do to create jobs on both ends and the transportation. I mean, this city, the whole region is growing and people need to get around and they all can't be driving cars. So that's the question the governor has to ask. It's not a question, do we want to spend $300 million less? It's a question of whether or not the Purple Line will help the city and the region and the counties move up into the next 20, 30, 40 years. That's the question, not whether we're going to save $1 here or $1 there.
And we'll see how
if that, we wouldn't build anything.
We'll see how he answers it. Allison Silverberg has now joined us in studio. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
She is the Vice Mayor of Alexandria. Congratulations. You won this week's primary election for mayor.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Many were surprised at the outcome of this race. You ousted four-term Mayor William Ewell, winning by just over 300 votes. The Washington Post editorialized at some point that you were not a viable candidate. Now, having won this mayoral race, are you sticking your tongue out at the Washington Post and saying, "Ha, fooled you"? Did the victory surprise you at all?
Well, I'm deeply honored that the citizens of Alexandria have voted for me to be the Democratic nominee. And I'm absolutely thrilled and excited. And we're moving forward and we're looking forward to the November general election. And
So
want
far
to unify the party and move forward and unify the city.
So far, you have no opponents in the November general election. This was a primary, but the current mayor, Bill Ewell, has not ruled out a write-in candidacy for that November election. What would be your feeling about that?
If that's what
I
he
beat you
chooses.
once, I'll beat you again. No, go ahead, please.
Well, 3 years ago when I ran for council, I got the most votes, and that's what led me to be the vice mayor. Now, this time, I ran for mayor and got the most votes. Perhaps people did underestimate my campaign. I don't know.
Well,
But we ran a hard campaign, and we had 100 to 200 volunteers at least. I don't know. It's an all volunteer grassroots campaign, and we worked really hard. And I think the message resonated across the city in terms of rebuilding the people's trust, in terms of thoughtful, appropriate development, and looking and addressing the city's debt. And there are many issues on which people said, I want to vote for Allison Silverberg for mayor. It's time for change.
the day after the election, the council, you met, Mayor Yule, I understand I wasn't there, but congratulated you on winning. Is that not right? It's the next day when, didn't he? Have you spoken to him directly about? Has he said to you anything? Has he congratulated you? I thought he did.
He did on Wednesday
Right.
night on the dais, and Wednesday morning we were briefly together at the dedication for the Hermione, the tall ship at the waterfront.
Has he in any
didn't
way
call
indicated
me.
to you personally that he may run a write-in campaign against you in November?
I've not discussed it with him.
He hasn't brought it up, and you haven't asked him.
I have not asked him, and he has not brought it up. I simply said, and I say this here, that I said to him Wednesday morning, I said to him, and I've said to Mr. Donnelly that they both ran very good campaigns, and I asked for their help and advice and input and their thoughts on all the issues, and that we can move forward as a city.
You're the vice mayor, so you still have to do the work on the council. But
Yes.
you got to, and you would not take office until when? Assuming
January
that you win in
2nd.
November, January 2nd.
2016.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's different. I would like to ask this question: people from councils or legislatures moving to the executive branch, the mayor's office or governor's office. It's one thing to assess, analyze, and look at projects that are being proposed. You will be the executive. You will be the person running the city. It'll be your job to propose things. How can people expect you to move on? You said you want to have thoughtful, deliberative discussions about development. Some people are saying, but you cannot have paralysis by analysis, that you have to make decisions, even if you don't have all the facts you'd like to have. How will we see you working as mayor once you get the job? That was one of the criticisms, but you might be too slow by looking for so much input that things might slow down at the time the region is.
Well, your question implies that, in my opinion, that you're stating that I'm anti-development. I'm not anti-development. I'm definitely for the National Science Foundation and pushed for that and voted for that, and I'm enthusiastic about their coming.
You supported the metro station,
the metro
bond
station,
issues.
That's right, and Landmark Mall. And but what I often say and feel, and I think that the people voted this way, is that I think we should be pursuing thoughtful, appropriate development that fits in, is to scale, and will protect our neighborhoods and quality of life. We have a tremendous city, but we also need to safeguard it in terms of quality of life and be thoughtful about it. But absolutely, the development projects coming forward in terms of smart growth around the Eisenhower Metro Station and also Eisenhower West, where the Van Dorn Metro Station is. There's tremendous possibility for growth there that we need to pursue. Also developing a lot of commercial base and mixed use right there around the commercial entities around the Potomac Yard Metro stop that will be right near the Target store there off Jeff Davis Highway. Tremendous opportunity. I have voted consistently. I think people should look at the facts.
Okay.
And look at the votes. And I voted against exercising eminent domain, for example. Exercising eminent domain is very anti-business. I'm certainly pro-business, and I think we should grow the commercial tax base, but do it in a balanced way. But that vote on eminent domain was very anti-business, and I'm proud of that vote. I think a lot of people took note of that. I voted against extending the parking meter hours in Old Town and Carlisle. I think that's been proven to be very anti-business. We need to roll that back, and I would work towards that endeavor. There are a number of things that I push. I think that people should look at the record and not necessarily
Can you be more
conjecture.
explicit about what you mean when you talk about growing the economy in a balanced way?
Growing the commercial tax base is what I said.
Okay, growing the commercial
Sorry,
tax base.
to correct you. Well, we need to diversify our economy so we're not so tied to the ups and downs of the federal government. And of course, I think that for the whole region, frankly. But for Alexandria, we need to look at opportunities where we can bring in entities like the National Science Foundation and be very proactive in doing so. Also letting the community know, let business owners know that we are open for business and make it easier to start a business and maintain a business in the city of Alexandria. We need to communicate that we're open for business. Business leaders need to look at us as an entrepreneurial zone. And Port City Brewery, for example, is very popular throughout the country as a beer. They opened right there off of Duke and Wheeler. There could be craft brew entities, let's say near Eisenhower West, that would do very well there. That's light industrial use. Excellent. We need to bring in knowledge-based workers and knowledge-based entities that bring in thought leaders and policy thinkers and think tanks, et cetera. We can do a lot, and I think the sky's the limit. I'm very excited about this. I think Alexandria has an incredible quality of life that people love coming to our restaurants. The president and Mrs. Obama come to our restaurants. A lot of people from all over the world come to Alexandria, enjoy the sights and the food and the shops that are incredible. And right now, by the way, I just want to mention that the Hermione, the tall ship, a replica of the ship that Marquis de Lafayette sailed here and to help our General Washington at the time and the founding of our great country and our abiding friendship with the French. It's absolutely amazing. I really encourage people to go see this.
How long is it going to be there?
I understand it's there. I don't want to misquote this. I understand it's there till Sunday.
So go now.
Go now.
Go now. I would go today.
Can I ask you about rapid transit? You know, Arlington killed the streetcar. I was told Alexandria wasn't really sure about the cost of a streetcar hooking it up. There were some early proposals that maybe Alexandria could hook up something, but you guys didn't do that. But you have,
and that predates me.
It predates you.
Yeah.
But I'm old. But there also is rapid bus, which is what's it called? The high capacity transit.
Bus rapid transit, BRT.
Is the city doing the right thing by that? Because it's growing the city and then getting people around the city without being suffocated by cars is important. What do you see in terms of transportation? We've had these issues in Montgomery County and Arlington and the district. Now Alexandria, what's the future there for transportation in your view?
Well, bus rapid transit just opened within the past year on Jeff Davis Highway, as you know. It's connecting people in that last mile between Metro and their homes and work, et cetera. We need to do everything we can to get people out of their cars. A number of, I do support these transportation projects, and we need to continue to be proactive to encourage people to take mass transit. Absolutely. One thing that we need to also look at is, as people commute through Alexandria, that they need to abide by our speed limits, frankly. That sometimes folks are speeding through some of our quiet neighborhoods, and that's a concern of mine and of many residents. And we need to continue to look at that and work with our police to let people know when we drive through Chevy Chase, Maryland, they're there to ticket. And
would that be speed cameras more? I don't. What is the status?
We only have a few.
Does Virginia, the state government, allow localities to have speed cameras? I don't even know.
We have a few.
You have red light cameras, I think.
We have a few cameras. Not like DC has a huge number. I understand.
We lead the nation. No, not close.
You have talked about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know that we need to go that route as DC has. I would not favor that necessarily.
Washington Avenue, but more Washington, speed
DC.
Well, no, but various on the major avenues, speed cameras.
No, we have some speed cameras, but I would definitely favor some speed cameras, but mainly more police presence, as letting people know that we're there, and if they want to come through, great. But they just need to follow the speed limits.
You've talked about transparency, including having fewer executive council sessions. What are those, and what's the issue?
I think it's a great question. I have talked a lot about that, Kojo. We have had a number of we hold executive sessions to discuss numerous issues, whether they're personnel issues or possible plans. Personnel issues, certainly understandable. Those should be in private. But the practice, for example, was discussed in executive session, and I was not on the council at the time. This predates me many years, but that was discussed at length in executive session. And it's unfortunate because so much has happened as a result of this BRAC building at Seminary and 395. It wasn't discussed with the surrounding neighborhood. They had no input. It's not near a metro stop. It's going to cost the city, it's going to cost the state and federal government a lot of money in terms of putting in this off ramp. But in terms of the city alone, it's off the tax rolls. It's going to cost Alexandria over $60 million over the next 20 years. And I feel, and many people feel, that is an economic tragedy for the city. It's
a monument of what not to do, or what not how to do.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. And I thank you. And it's unbelievable, actually, when we think about it. And so it is a source of pain, I think, for the city. And I just think that we should welcome citizen input and media scrutiny for situations like that. And by the way, you have to ask yourself, and I think all of us do in the city of Alexandria and the media, imagine if there had been letters to the editor, if there had been an editorial, if there had been questions, if it had been shared. We have a brilliant citizenry in Alexandria, absolutely brilliant. And when people come to speak, we need to show them the respect that they deserve. They take the time on Saturday.
By the way, someone just called to say the ship's last day in harbor is actually today. And we checked on it. The Hermine is in Alexandria only through today.
Okay,
so
thank you for letting me know.
We don't lift the Wilson Bridge, drawbridge, it can't leave.
You got to get over there. Oh, that's true. They can't leave.
I'm glad you corrected that. That's important. It's absolutely amazing. It is. I really encourage everyone to see it.
A grassroots campaign emerged in this primary, Republicans for Allison. How significant do you think that campaign was in your win?
Well, the folks who started that live on a small section of Russell Road, and they had reached out to me after Halloween 2013. I was on the council about 10 months. They'd actually
I should tell our listeners that the Post reports that after a driver hit a young trick-or-treater on the aforementioned Russell Road in Alexandria 2 years ago, residents complained to City Hall about speeding vehicles that had caused scores of accidents on the street. They say the only official who responded was Vice Mayor Allison Silverberg. So that was the basis of Republicans for Silverberg?
I helped them. I didn't, obviously, when people email or call, I don't know or ask, and I don't really care at all what people's affiliation is. I just wanted to help make that stretch of Russell Road safer. And really, as a citizens' engagement, I give them total credit, working with me and the staff of City Hall, and we got things done. It wasn't just speed tables. We had more police presence on Russell Road for ticketing. We have other things there to tell you how fast you're going and to slow down, etc. So the speed tables are one part of that, but it was all citizen engagement. And then once I announced for mayor, unbeknownst to me, these neighbors on Russell Road, who I did not know before this situation, that when they came forward, they designed and put out signs that said Republicans for Allison.
An indication that being responsive on very local issues can make a big difference.
That's true. It is.
Well, I just want our streets to be
personal touch.
It is. I just want our streets to be safe for all our residents and all Alexandrians. I certainly welcome any and all support, and I'm grateful for all support. But we need to unify as a city, and of course, the issues of Alexandria, are not necessarily red or blue. They're green. They're about debt. They're about open space and libraries and schools, and I want our schools to be excellent, obviously, and I want us to continue to push for that. There's the debt, there's rebuilding the people's trust, and then there's, of course, the development issue that we just spoke about, the thoughtful development. But here's the thing. Everyone knows I'm a staunch Democrat. I interned for Senator Ted Kennedy on the Hill when I was in college at American University. I worked for Senator Lloyd Bentsen of Texas for 2 years on the Hill when he was chair of the Senate Finance Committee. I was chair of this
And the
city's
point of that
economic
is-
We have less
opportunities
than 2
commission.
minutes
Yeah.
left.
Okay,
Point of
the
that is-
economic
Howard
opportunity.
usually has many questions at this point.
Well, I was just going to say, but at the end of the day, we're all Alexandrians, and we need to pull together as never before. And
What
I,
Good. That's very nice. Thank you. I want to know, what are the perks of being mayor? How much does the mayor make? Do you know?
I'm not sure offhand. It's either 30 to 33,
You got a
maybe
driver?
35,000.
Do you get a driver?
No, I don't need a driver.
So there are no perks.
We got
There is.
a tweet from Ashley who says, please ask Ms. Silverberg about her position on the Potomac Yard Metro. We don't have much time
She's
left,
for it.
but we
I
do
voted
know
for it.
that you voted with the
Plan
others.
B.
It was a unanimous vote. What helped you make up your mind about this so-called Plan B?
Well, Plan B is in the commercial zone.
Correct.
It's right sort of behind the Target store. And I think
That
that's
goes along
called
with your
smart growth.
Attitude about growing business.
Smart growth. Building around the metro hubs, transit hubs.
Still have 50 seconds, Tom.
Well, you know, I should tell you, I was at the last mayoral debate in Alexandria. I sat in the audience, and some people were stunned that I was actually there. But
Thank you
my
for
way
coming. I
there.
did not know you were
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I
It was
there.
packed. Every
It
seat
was packed. It was
taken.
and you could see how the election was going.
Well, people were really interested in this election, and people came out and voted, and I'm deeply honored by everyone's support, and it's time to come together.
Well, November is next. That's when the general election is. Good luck in that.
Thank you
election.
so much for having me today.
Allison
Okay.
Silverberg is vice mayor of Alexandria. She won this week's primary election for mayor. Tom Sherwood, he's our resident analyst. He's back. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, always a pleasure.
Happy Flag Day.
Happy Flag Day to you, and thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nandi. Coming up Monday on